The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe.
Hello everyone, welcome to our podcast today. I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Swantje Westpfahl. Swantje is the Director and CEO of the Institute for Security and Safety at Mannheim University of Applied Sciences. She also serves as Director of Vicon Consulting. In this episode, we will discuss cybersecurity and cyber risk. We'll delve into what this means for organizations, exploring both cultural perspectives and practical implications. We'll also look at the outcomes of implementing cybersecurity measures within an organization. Let's join the conversation as Swantje shares her journey into the world of cybersecurity and how she's arrived at her current position.
Wow, that's not the most straightforward part, to be honest. So I once trained to become a teacher, then did my PhD in computational linguistics. So that's when I first encountered with all the topics on data security and privacy things, because I was working on spoken language data. And this really got me going, because I looked out for a lot of my own privacy and security parts. And then I thought, okay, I'd actually like to work in that space rather than being on the other side and stealing all the data. So this is when I changed and started working for Vicon as a consultant, as an information security management consultant, and then entered the whole world of cybersecurity, OT security, IT security, all the things which are there, which are fantastic and absolutely inspiring. And it never gets boring because it's so different every time you look at it from a different perspective. But yeah, so not the most straightforward way, I would say. But I love that I can bring to the table all my experiences from teaching, from understanding humans, same as all the computer technologies and AI perspectives, which I also brought through my dissertation. Yes.
I was just going to say, it's a great foundation from that teaching perspective, because you're already thinking about others, getting your message across, getting the content landed, and how important it is to have multiple stakeholders who've only got their own perspective, their own view, and walking in their steps to really kind of get that adoption, right? Because if you really want anyone to uptake, you need to make sure that they feel like there's a benefit to them and you can kind of clearly articulate. So I'm actually thinking this is a really strong foundation for the work that you've done. And you've also explained about how the cheese is always moving. This market and this industry is moving at lightning pace at any one time. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about the world of AI in that space too, how it's kind of dovetailing. And tell us a little bit about how you're actually seeing the marketplace currently from the threats perspective, all these different areas where most people are sleeping in their bed, not even thinking about these things, but we're in this world where there's a lot happening.
First of all, you should be scared. There's enough reason to be scared. No, it's different. Maybe coming back to what you said before, I would say working in the industry and working with partners, I would say every cybersecurity project is a transformation and a change project. And with this, we need to have all stakeholders on board. And every transformation project, every change project requires that you have a proper stakeholder management and really understand the needs and the desires and also the needed upskilling of each of those stakeholders. So when we look at the threat landscape out there, this is one part. As you said, most people, most stakeholders really don't know about what's happening out there. And for some, this is blissful ignorance. That might be. But I also think it's really important that we tell them what they're missing there. Because if you can't make the stakeholders understand what they're up against, then we've already lost our position in the change and transformation part. So this is kind of the foundation, the basics, where we need to change a lot, because most awareness campaigns, most cybersecurity campaigns I've been seeing, picture this guy in a hoodie, this lone guy in the basement in a hoodie. But this is not what we are up against, right? And this is kind of gives a weird and wrong picture of the threat landscape, because it suggests that we're up against that one guy, and obviously one guy we can trick, one guy we can outsmart. But this is not the reality. The reality is that we have ransomware cartels, that we have organized crime, that we have many, many stakeholders on the other side who work together collaboratively, have business-like structures pretty well. We've seen it from the Conti leaks. And obviously they have crawls as well and insiders as well who talk to the greater public and leak data. So it's pretty similar that we understand, and it's really important that we understand it's actually organized and very well-structured organizations who we're up against. And only then can our stakeholders understand what they're up against and why they must take action pretty soon.
It's funny because how I explain it is, it's like, imagine you're in Manhattan and everyone's got briefcases going to work. Well, they're doing the exact same things, but they're probably not briefcases, they're rucksacks, and they're going into the office, they're clocking in, clocking out, and their job is just to do cybercrime. And people are like, what? It's like, yeah, they're going in, they're commuting in on the DART, the metro, whatever you say, and they're coming in to do their work, and then they're going home, and that's what they do. And when you start to think that there's certain countries with that mindset, there's certain regions have got that level, there you can actually see how much is being put into this and much is being invested into doing harm. It is a very, very complicated process. But in saying that, some of the simplest ways that you can trick people are still very, very effective.
Yeah, and especially because you don't need that one guy who has all the talents. I mean, we do that in our organizations as well, right? At least we try to play to everybody's strengths in their organization. And it's pretty much the same here. So you have the guys who are only there for creating access and social engineering. And they're good at that. They're really the best ones they can find, because otherwise they wouldn't work in that department. And then you have the other guys who are very good with the techie part. They're not much the people, but they're the techies, and they do all the techie stuff which needs to be done to encrypt a whole organization. Just to put it, I mean, it's much more complicated than that, but they're very good at that as well. And then you have the communication people again, who are there in order to haggle with the customers. So their customers are obviously those who got ransomware or hacked. And those are complete departments as well. I've seen conversations where it was said, oh yeah, my partner, my colleague, he promised you a 10% discount if you answer within this week. Oh yes, I've seen it in the notes. Yeah, sure, I'll give you the 10% discount as well. So actually they're working in shifts. They're getting someone else there. If they get ill, they're very well organized. And people have to understand that in order to understand that we need to work together as well and collaborate in the very same way.
Yeah. And so tell me about the perspective from an organization and how you start to create the muscle and the habits of becoming, protecting yourself from cyber crimes and misalignment with with the business to ensure that you're protected as best as you can, because there's no 100% on this, right?
Yeah, it's a huge topic. I mean, establishing a cybersecurity culture is a much bigger task than just running an awareness campaign. So most companies feel happy with, having that web-based training or an awareness campaign, and then for the rest of the year, nobody hears about it anymore. And you tick the box on the compliance sheet. You need that you have done your training for your people. But this is not how you build a cybersecurity culture. Building a culture is really much more tricky because you need to get into the heads and the hearts of people. A colleague once told me, culture is what people do when the boss is not looking. So the idea is that you want to have, so culture is always about values, about underlying beliefs, and some taken for granted beliefs as well, but also about behavior. Culture is a lot about behavior. Every definition of culture we have around there, and there's millions, I'm pretty sure, mentions that it results in a group of people, not just one person, but a group of people behaving in a certain way, which means in our realm in cybersecurity that we want everyone to behave securely, not just that one person who knows all the stuff and who is aware, but that actually it's a whole group. And by behaving in a secure way, you inspire others to do so, because this is how you do it, right? This taken for granted values, like this is how other people do it, this is how I do it. And we really, in establishing a cybersecurity culture, we want people to get there. And we can do this, and usually awareness campaigns are a starting point. Obviously, if we want, as I said, it's stakeholder management. You need to understand your stakeholders first and where they stand. There's no need in teaching and training people who are already aware, because then we overbore them and they turn away from us, and we might never get them back. So it's really, really important that you assess first what's there, who is how far in their track and behaving securely. And then tailor campaigns which are exactly meant to do that, to train those people who have no knowledge so far, and also give more intense and more technical training to those who already know a lot. And this can have so many different phases. This is why it's so interesting, right? We work with customers all over the world, and it's really, really interesting to see what different didactic concepts we come to play in the different organizations. Once we've done the analysis, once we've understood who really needs what, the training we deliver looks very different from organization to organization. So with some, it's important, to get the ground levels done, to answer all the important questions, like why do we actually need to do this? How should we behave? Like, which is the required behavior? And tell me exactly, again, why I should behave in this way. And then tell me how I can do this, because it's not part of my everyday work. So this is like the basic level. But in other organizations, we start with the management level and making sure they understand proper risk management and how to handle risk, and what risk, actually cyber risk, mean to their department, to their product, whatever they are developing, how they can integrate that in their business and day-to-day management of that company. And if you start on the management level, people will then have the power to also give room for this. For example, software development, right? If their manager, the product manager, doesn't give room for security features, then they won't be there. So It's really important to get that middle layer of the management really on your side. If you want to establish a security culture, these are the key people you need to play with, and obviously the top management as well, because they need to provide funding, they need to provide resources in terms of people who actually do the stuff, and they need to be there as like the first ones, the early adopters, because this is, everybody's looking at the top management, and if they don't take it seriously, the rest of the company won't as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot in there. So a personalized approach, making sure that you're winning the hearts and minds of people, but you also have the behaviors to reinforce what you have, different assumptions for all the stakeholders. You have to be very careful with the assumptions, so you do the analysis on that, and it's a very, very specific to each company, each team, and having that kind of personal flavor to that. Tell me a little bit about organizations that are adopting this and they're doing it the right way. They've got the culture, they're generating the types of habits. How are they protecting themselves, and what are some of the outcomes from a positive side they could start to realize?
Yeah, so in most companies we work with, this is a very long procedure. I just wanted to have it up front here. It's not anything you can establish overnight. This takes months, sometimes years to establish. But what really happens when you get it going and when it actually develops is that suddenly teams start working together which didn't work together beforehand. So I've seen, for example, corporate security teams starting to work with IT security very, very closely, and they've never spoken to each other beforehand, which is then in turn really, really helpful when it comes to incidents and incident handling. Also between different development departments, because they start talking about security on a meta level. Security is in all our products needed. It's in all our departments needed. So this is something we can talk to each other on a meta level, which also creates a better company culture, and a more open exchange in, trust between the entities, but also collaboration. And this drives innovation as well. So it has a lot of benefits. Of course, it takes up a lot of time in the beginning to establish that. But it also has benefits because you can talk on that meta level with each other and create links, which wouldn't have been there otherwise. And the good thing about this is, if you look at these companies where you've established a security culture, it goes, at one point, it goes to the background noise again. So it's really what it develops to be. Like, it's such a, yes, of course we do this, a natural habit, that it starts being in the background again, because everybody's understood their part in the risk management and the resilience of the company. And I think what we gain here is then, if you have proper training and simulation exercises running, these exercises, which we run there in companies like this, are so different from those who've done it for the first time somewhere, right? Because you can already see that all the stakeholders know each other who are on the crisis management table. All the stakeholders actually have thought about it, how they would react in terms of crisis, in terms of incidents. And this also helps a lot on a more business level, because there are other crises other than ransomware attacks, other than any IT attack you might have or IT problem you might have. But if you also trained crisis beforehand, you can handle, as a company, as a team, you can handle other crises as well, much better. And as you've established that link and that conversation between all the different stakeholders, well, at least there already is a direct line of communication, and there already is a respectful communication between those people. And I think this really, really helps organizations as a whole to be resilient, but also to be innovative.
It's so comprehensive that people could probably have one perspective going in, and then when they actually unpeel the onion, or maybe the iceberg is a better example, they just see how far down it is. But you're securing your business, you're putting in the best practices. Your employees are actually saying, well, actually, these guys really take this sincerely. They're putting in suitable steps for training and development. And that's a very, very engaging piece for that business as well, because their staff can see, well, how seriously they take this. And from my experience, people want to stay with companies like that. Actually, they show a process, procedures, systems, which is very, very effective. So today we've talked a little bit about culture. We've talked about instilling it, some of the benefits that have actually come from that as well. We've also talked about the mindset of hackers and how it isn't a person where it's wearing a hoodie. We've got corporations that are running this as a business, that they've got like almost a P&L with people in different departments and working on those different roles as well. For people that are new to this and they understand that they need to take some action and take some steps forward, but are a little bit kind of concerned about how to kind of go through that level, where they might be having just Excel on their desktops and emails in their attachments in emails that aren't documented, what advice would you get to say to them to get going now?
Well, there's two things. It also, again, depends very much on the people, whether those are from their personality, people who like to solve puzzles for themselves. Then I would advise them to have a look at the standards. There's the ISO 27001 standard for product security and production security. There is the 62443, the IEC 62443. So for these standards, you have to understand that a lot of smart people put their minds together to write these standards. So this is kind of the output of many, many people who put their minds together and in a consensus way designed these standards and signed it by saying, okay, this is how you do it and the very possible best way you can do it. And if you've done it, you should be secure. So this is one part, starting with those standards, reading them, trying to implement them step by step. Of course, these standards are really, really big. So there's no shame in getting help. There are a lot of companies out there who provide help in getting things started. And usually what you should look out for is find companies who really start with understanding you. Because if they run around and promise you, we'll have this going within 2 months because we have the right templates, this is probably not the very best approach. This could help, yes, maybe. But in most of the cases, it's much better if they start with trying to understand you and how you work, and then integrate security in your processes and everything which is already there. Because otherwise you will have to restructure a lot, and you don't want to do this. In most companies, sometimes it's necessary because for security reasons, some things have to be restructured. But in most cases, you can pretty much streamline it if you find the right partners and to talk to. So I would advise you, first of all, if you're the type of person trying to figure out everything on your own, or you have people in your team who like that, they're standards, they're really, really helpful. If you don't get help, and find people who really want to understand your company before starting to restructure everything.
Dr. Swantje Westphahl, thank you very much for your help today. It was really, really helpful and insightful. You've been a wonderful guest.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.